Tonight, we travel back in time, back to the warm breath of the desert, where sand hides secrets and the moonlight falls like silver dust over the Nile. Among the tombs carved into the Valley of the Kings, there once slept a boy who became a legend. His name was Tutankhamun. The Forgotten Pharaoh, the sleep story of Tutankhamun. It begins with a door sealed by time. For more than 3,000 years, it waited beneath the sand, hidden behind walls of dust and silence. No human hand had touched it since the day it was closed. And yet, in November of 1922, the desert shifted. A team of excavators led by a man named Howard Carter uncovered a step carved into limestone, and then another and another descending into the earth. At the base of the stairway lay a doorway marked with the royal cartouche of a forgotten king. Carter knelt, brushed away the sand, and peered through a small hole into the darkness beyond. When his eyes adjusted, he whispered the words that would echo through history. Yes, wonderful things. That discovery would ignite the modern world's fascination with ancient Egypt. But the story of Tutankhamun does not begin there. It begins in a world of gods and kings, of temples and river songs, of gold and incense and quiet faith. It begins, as all Egyptian stories do, with the river. Chapter 1. The River Remembers. The Nile was more than water. It was memory itself. Each year the flood arrived like a heartbeat, renewing the land and feeding its people. When the river rose, farmers rejoiced. When it withdrew, it left behind a gift, a dark, fertile soil from which all life grew. On the river's eastern bank, the sun climbed. On the western bank, it fell and disappeared into the desert. The living built their homes on the east. The dead were carried westward, toward the setting sun, into the land of eternity. It was here, among those western cliffs, that Egypt built its great necropolis, the Valley of the Kings. The 18th dynasty was a time of splendor and stability. Temples lined the river, obelisks pointed toward the heavens, and in the city of Akhetaten, a strange revolution had taken root. Pharaoh Akhenaten, in his devotion to a single god, the Aten, the sun disk, had broken from the old religion, closing the temples of Amun and angering the priesthood that had guided Egypt for centuries. In the wake of this upheaval, a child was born, Tutankhamun, the living image of the Aten. He entered a world divided, between old gods and new, between loyalty and rebellion, between the unshakable rhythm of tradition and the bold experiments of faith. Imagine a palace at dusk. The air is warm, the marble floors cool beneath bare feet. Servants move quietly through the halls, and somewhere a nurse hums a lullaby to the infant prince. Outside, the river glows red beneath the setting sun. No one could have guessed that this small boy would one day restore the gods of Egypt, and in death become its most famous king. The Nile continued to flow, as it always had. Empires rose and fell upon its banks, and yet the river remembered everything, even the name of a child who would outlive his own dynasty. Chapter 2. A Boy Among Statues. In the palaces of Egypt, childhood was unlike any other. Every step, every word, every gesture was watched by tutors, scribes, and priests. The young Tutankhamun learned the sacred rituals of kingship long before he could understand them. He was taught the hymns of the temples, the symbols carved on sacred walls, the stories of gods who ruled the sky and the underworld. He learned to hold the crook and flail, not as weapons, but as symbols of duty. The crook guided the people, the flail guarded the harvest. From the first days of his life, he was being shaped not into a boy, but into an idea, the living image of divine order. In the courtyards, artisans polished stone until it shone like water. Statues of past pharaohs stood tall and silent, their faces carved into perfect calm. To a child, they must have seemed both guardians and judges, forever watching. But in Egypt, statues were not mere images. They were vessels, doorways for the gods themselves. When the ritual of opening the mouth was performed, breath was given to stone and the divine entered the world of men. Outside the palace walls, the Nile carried fishermen, farmers, and merchants through the daily rhythm of life. Inside, the boy king studied the language of the heavens and the laws of the throne. He played the ancient board game of Senet, its carved squares said to mirror the journey of the soul through the afterlife. He laughed, he ran. Perhaps he dreamed of a world beyond duty. But every dream returned to the weight of the crown that awaited him. Among those who shared his early years was a young girl named Tutankhamun. She was the daughter of Akhenaten and Nefertiti, and his half-sister. In a palace ruled by divine lineage, marriage was not a matter of the heart, but of cosmic order. When the time came, they would wed, binding together the old faith and the new, restoring balance to a world that had lost it. Tutankhamun grew up surrounded by art and prayer, yet also by uncertainty. The gods were silent. The people were restless. Even the statues seemed to wait for a sign. And somewhere beyond the horizon, the priests of Amun whispered of restoration, a return to the order that had been broken. Soon, the boy would become the instrument of that return. Chapter 3: The Gentle Weight of the Crown. When Tutankhamun became king, he was still a child. He could barely lift the crown that was placed upon his head. The throne name he took was Tutankhamun, the living image of Amun, a declaration to the world that the old gods had returned. The temples that had fallen silent were opened again. Priests lit incense once more in the sanctuaries of Thebes. Music returned to the processions. The smell of myrrh filled the air. But behind the boy stood older men, viziers, generals, and priests who guided his every move. Among them was a strong and shrewd soldier named Horemheb, who would one day wear the crown himself. In these early years, the government of Egypt was not in the hands of a boy, but in those of the court that surrounded him. Still, Tutankhamun's reign marked a healing of the nation's spirit. The artisans of Thebes worked again. The festivals of the gods returned. After years of confusion, the people felt that the balance, the mat, had been restored. In temple carvings, the young king was shown beside his queen Ankhesenamun, offering to the gods with calm devotion. They were painted as serene, ideal figures, but behind that serenity there must have been fragility. For the young pharaoh's body was weak. Modern science would one day show signs of illness, a clubfoot, fragile bones, pain that no artist could have drawn upon stone. And yet he carried out his role with grace. He rode in chariots, though perhaps only briefly. He presided over ceremonies. He gave orders to rebuild shrines and repair what the heresy of his father had broken. Each day, scribes brought papyrus scrolls for his seal. Each evening, the sun sank over the Nile, and the palace lamps glowed with golden light. The king's court moved back to Thebes, away from the deserted city of Akhenaten. It was as if Egypt itself exhaled, a long, relieved breath after years of tension. At night, the boy and his queen may have stood upon the palace roof, watching the constellations cross the sky. The ancient stories told that the goddess Nut swallowed the sun each evening, and gave birth to it again at dawn. For a people who saw the divine in every rhythm of nature, it was a promise: nothing truly ends, everything is reborn. Across the Nile from Thebes, the cliffs of the western desert rose in silent waves of stone. This was the realm of the dead, a sacred landscape where pharaohs built their tombs, known as the houses of eternity. To the Egyptians, death was not an ending, but a transformation. The tomb was a gateway to the next world, a place where the soul could be reborn among the stars. Chapter 4: The House of Eternity. In the small community of Deir el-Medina, skilled workers carved and painted the royal tombs. They were not slaves, but master artisans who lived by the rhythm of the sun and the tools of their craft. At dawn they climbed the cliffs, carrying baskets of pigment and chisels. They painted walls with scenes of gods, prayers and journeys, maps for the soul to follow beyond the grave. For Tutankhamun, a tomb was prepared in the Valley of the Kings. It was modest compared to those of great rulers before him, perhaps because his death came suddenly, before a grander monument could be built. Still, what it lacked in size, it would make up for in mystery. Within its narrow chambers were placed treasures crafted by the best hands of Egypt: a golden throne with inlays of blue lapis and red carnelian, a chariot ready for eternal journeys, and countless small statues meant to serve the king in the afterlife. Every object had meaning. The golden mask was not mere decoration. It was the vessel of the king's eternal identity. In the afterlife, he would wear it as his face among the gods. The painted ceiling of the burial chamber showed the goddess Nut arching across the heavens, her body dotted with stars. She would protect him as he joined the sky. The workmen sealed the tomb with care. They filled the corridors with ritual offerings. They pressed a final stamp of the necropolis seal upon the plastered door. Then they walked away, leaving silence behind, a silence that would last for more than 3,000 years. Chapter 5: The Night Without Footsteps. Death came quietly. We do not know the exact moment or cause. Perhaps it was an infection, an accident, a fever that worsened too fast. In any case, the palace fell into mourning. Priests and embalmers prepared the royal body according to the sacred rites. First, the body was washed with water from the Nile and anointed with fragrant oils. The internal organs were removed and placed into canopic jars protected by guardian goddesses. The heart, believed to be the seat of the soul, was left in place. It would speak for him in the judgment before Osiris. Then the body was wrapped in linen, layer upon layer, each bandage accompanied by a prayer. Amulets were placed among the wrappings, a scarab to guard the heart, the eye of Horus to see through darkness, small figures of deities to protect the journey ahead. Finally came the mask: gold, lapis, obsidian, the likeness of a young man with calm eyes and a faint knowing smile. The mask was not just a portrait, it was a transformation. Through it, the mortal became divine. One by one, the shrines were closed around him, gold inside wood, wood inside stone. The final door was sealed. The torches were extinguished. The footsteps faded into silence, and the valley kept its secret. Chapter 6: Yes, Wonderful Things. Centuries passed. Dynasties rose and fell. The sands drifted over forgotten doorways. Even the names of the kings were lost. Tutankhamun's tomb lay hidden beneath debris from later excavations, untouched, unseen, preserved by accident and time. In 1922, British archaeologist Howard Carter returned to a patch of ground he had searched before. He believed that one royal tomb was still missing. Day after day, his workers dug through rubble and limestone dust. Then, one morning, a boy carrying water struck something hard with his shovel, the top of a buried stairway. Carter ordered the team to clear it carefully. Step by step, they uncovered a sealed doorway bearing the royal cartouches of Tutankhamun. Behind it, another sealed wall. And beyond that, the darkness of a room untouched since antiquity. Carter made a small hole and inserted a candle. When his eyes adjusted to the glow, he saw shapes glimmering in the light. Strange animals, statues, chariots, gold everywhere. When his patron, Lord Carnarvon, asked if he could see anything, Carter answered quietly, "Yes, wonderful things." The discovery sent shockwaves through the world. Newspapers called it the greatest archaeological find of all time. For the first time, a pharaoh's tomb had been found almost intact. Inside were more than 5,000 artifacts, a treasure that spoke not of greed, but of devotion, artistry, and belief in eternity. The mask of Tutankhamun became a symbol known across the globe, the face of ancient Egypt itself. But perhaps the greatest treasure was not the gold, nor the jewels, but the reminder of how fragile and human even kings can be. He was a boy who inherited a kingdom in turmoil, who tried to restore faith, and whose brief life became eternal. His tomb, hidden by accident, preserved his story for all of us who came long after. Every scarab, every statue, every painted wall whispers the same truth. That time may bury us, but memory will rise again, like the Nile after the flood. And so, under the quiet desert stars, the boy king still rests. Gold against linen, silence against stone, and though 3,000 years have passed, his name is spoken still. Tutankhamun, the forgotten pharaoh who was never truly forgotten.